everybody! Today we're going to talk about bodies. I'm going to teach you guys how to look for angles, determine the shapes of the body, add details, and a few tips and tricks. So let's get started! So the first thing you want to do when you're learning how to draw bodies is to find a good reference photo. And if you can't find one online, you can always take a picture of yourself in the pose that you want to draw. Today I'll be using this photo of a drawing I've already done for copyright reasons. So after you have your reference photo, the first thing you want to do is look for any angles on the photo. These angles are often found on the shoulders, hips, back, and face. So for this particular photo, while her hips look pretty straight, her back is slightly curved and her left shoulder is much higher than her right shoulder, so that's a very drastic line. It's also important to locate the basic shapes of the body. So for her, she has two triangles making up her upper and lower half, and then two oblong oval shapes making up her thighs. Once your angles and shapes are figured out, it's time to start drawing. So the first thing I like to do when I'm drawing is start off with the shoulders, and in this case, they had the most drastic line, so it's kind of a good base for the rest of the drawing. Next, I start loosely putting in those shapes that we talked about earlier. So for her, she had two triangles making up her upper and lower body, and two oblong ovals for her legs. I think a pretty common mistake that a lot of beginner artists make is when they start a drawing, they like to start with the head. In my experience, it's a lot easier to start with the shoulders and chest of the body because it's easier to get proportions correct that way. That's another reason I like to start off with just loose shapes in the beginning, because once those shapes are down, it's pretty easy to see if your legs are too long or your torso is too small. If you start off with your head and really detailed lines from the beginning, you could get halfway through your drawing and realize, oops, your body's too small for your head or your arms are too short. So once all your shapes are down, that's when I like to go in and draw the head. And again, I use really quick, just loose shapes and lines until it's about the size that I want it to be. So from here, all your shapes are down, everything looks pretty proportionate, and you can start going in on those details. And again, I like to start off with the chest because that's where the groundwork is going to be for where everything else in the body connects. So since you have all those shapes and angles laid out from the beginning, it's pretty easy to put in the details as you see them on the photo. So when you're looking at your reference picture and you have your shapes in place already, you can see where the curve of the waist is going to be, where her leg meets her hip is going to be, that sort of thing. So it's a lot easier to get those details down more accurately, and it makes your workflow so much faster. So I'm just going to finish adding these details in, and then I'll check back in. Okay, so most of my detailing is pretty much done. I wanted to go over a few tips and tricks to help with your anatomy moving forward. The first thing is being aware of where the rib cage is. You don't always have to draw it in your drawings, but it's good to know where it is. It helps you with your shading. And not only shading, but also angles. So if this wasn't a front-facing drawing and she was turned to the side, you would want to know where her rib cage was in case she was bent a certain way. It would be sticking out. And since this is a female drawing, you'll want to add little details like where the cleavage is. And yes, I realized I didn't really go over the arms too much, so we'll go over that right now. So the way I learned to do arms is to think of each segment as links on a chain. So starting with the shoulder, it's going to look wide compared to your bicep, which will be thinner, and your elbow will be wider as well. This is for front facing, so if you wanted to do a side view, just pretend that you would be turning the chain as well, as if you were looking at the chain as a side view. And then your shoulder would be thinner, your bicep would be a little wider, and your elbow would be thinner. And I know I didn't get into the head or hands today, but we'll save that for another video. Well, I hope you guys learned something today, and check back in later for more tutorials. Good luck drawing!